Hello, and welcome to the Open Forum panel recording of that's associated with our Paths Out of Care training. Today, you're going to hear from 4 different counties about how paths out of care are happening in their county, and we'll talk about some particular processes and protocols they have in place, as well as how they are working with respondents to work on psychiatric advance directives. Um, Before we get started, I wanted to share some key resources and trainings. So if you haven't yet, it could be helpful to watch the POWs Out of Care training so you have some context for the discussion. You can also look at the material, the training materials, so the PowerPoint and the notes, if you want to just get a sense of what's talked about there and if you want to link to any additional resources before having the panel. We also have a number of other trainings and a few different briefs that can be helpful as well. So pathways to services, a training on psychiatric advance directives, a series on trauma-informed care for behavioral health, including strategies for how to take a trauma-informed approach to care, and then strategies for outreach and engagement. And then those briefs as well, one focusing on the care process, specifically for county behavioral health, and then claims that outlines how to claim for administrative activities related to care. So now we're going to jump into our panel session, and I will have my colleague Rachel introduce the panelists, and now we're going to turn to that live discussion.
All right. So hi again. I'm Rachel Johnson-Yates. I'm an associate principal with Health Management Associates who does a lot of work in the behavioral health realm and liaison to several counties. I'm going to do just a quick introduction of the folks on the call that are serving as our panelists, and their bios will be dropped in the chat. So please take a moment to read their bios. They have amazing expertise, as you'll see on the panel. And we're just so thankful to have them with us today. So first, we have Alexandra Hoppus, who is the Clinical Services Manager over Forensic Mental Health at San Mateo County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services. We have Karina Gustafson, who is the Administrator for Riverside University Health Systems in the behavioral health realm. Claude Winship, the Behavioral Health Program Manager for the County of San Diego Health and Human Services Agency. And Frank Congini, who is the Health Services Assistant Deputy Director in Orange County with their behavioral health department. So welcome, everyone. We are so thankful to have you here. And with that, I think it's okay if we take down the slides and we'll just jump into the panel. All right, so welcome everyone. And I am going to actually start talking about dismissals, because we already have a couple of questions in the chat in the dismissal realm. So I would love to hear from all of you how your county is handling the dismissal process. So when we have talked about this, when we were prepping for this meeting, we talked about how many of your counties will have some variation in how long they're keeping cases open to help with outreach and engagement, that there are some folks that are dismissed, but we are still supporting, that there's all kinds of really cool stuff happening in your counties. And so, Frank, if you don't mind us starting with you, would love to hear from you all what it is that you're doing around determining whether or not it's appropriate to dismiss somebody, and any nuance that you want to add around hospitalization, incarceration, just the whole dismissal world. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So there's a couple pieces here. I did see one of the questions in there having to do with dismissal and reopening. Our judge does allow for us to dismiss without prejudice, so we can have people put back on the calendar without repetitioning. So that's one piece to look at. We prefer to repetition in certain instances to start the clock over for the year, but just nuances across the way. But I'll say that we generally try not to dismiss folks knowing that they're going to end up under the umbrella of the healthcare agency at some level, without a warm handoff, without having eyes on them. When we do get to that point, if somebody's in jail and we're waiting for them to be released and it's unknown, we won't dismiss until they've been released, not engaging. Same with a conservatorship hearing. We don't dismiss it when it's pending. We wait to see what the outcome is, just so that we are that safety net, knowing that we're the highest level of care that folks can be in, short of being hospitalized, right? So when we do dismiss someone, we do have a parallel path that we follow. We have folks, family members, parents that have come to our behavioral health advisory boards when we do dismiss, not knowing what's going on. So we provide a parallel path of our internal team. We have one person that's assigned to a dismissed case to continue to follow up. Obviously, we've got the data component we have to keep going on anyway. So we have that person following up, checking in. But at this point, we've probably interfaced with family members and collateral contacts, and we do assign a different person to just call and check in with a parent on a regular basis, and not by violating HIPAA. I think a lot of times folks go out for 3-4 hours looking for someone, and one phone call a month saying, "Hey, mom, how's it going? What's going on?" And don't even say the person's name, and she'll talk to you for 45 minutes and provide a lot of that information. And they feel still involved. Obviously, we don't give up information that we can't without an ROI, but we kind of do a complete wraparound piece of it, and the public defender stays involved and stays in contact very often as well.
Frank, thank you for sharing that. So it sounds like you all are understanding that you're taking a very human and person-centered approach. You're understanding that even if someone falls off the radar for care, we're having trouble finding them, getting them engaged, that likely they're going to interface with BH anyway. And so how can we provide supports to them and their families so that when they do kind of reemerge, that you all are on the front line, have already established some of that trust, and then hopefully can get them re-engaged as soon as possible. And that dismissal without prejudice also helps, that if you do connect with them in a relatively short time frame, that you can just kind of pick up where you left off. Does that sound right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we worked with the leadership here to restructure so that we now have the forensic justice involved in reentry services all under our wing. So we do have embedded staff in the jails.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody were to get arrested or hospitalized, we just kind of add folks to their case, right? So we adjust. Hey, now that part of who's going to pick up this case that's in jail will be part of our JCRP team, and they stay involved and they continue to report. And we get, instead of second or third hand knowledge, a lot of times first hand knowledge from where they're at, how they're progressing, and when they're going to be released. So instead of starting it over, we continue to look at what it's going to look like when they are released from jail, and keeping that continuity of care from our team working and collaborating more closely together. So yeah, we try to make sure when we go into court that all the questions that aren't on reports we turn in, the what then, right? All right, this person's going to still be in Orange County. They're still going to have schizophrenia, right? We're not curing homelessness. We're not curing schizophrenia by care court. What are we going to do if we dismiss? What are the paths?
That's great. Thank you, Frank, for sharing that. Claude, we would love to hear what you all are doing in this realm in terms of how you're engaging with the families, resources that you're providing, those sorts of things.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Here in San Diego County, we're coming up on close to 2 years, and so we've seen a wide range of individuals coming in and also not coming into the program. And so when it comes to the investigation phase for dismissals, we will exhaust our efforts in terms of engaging or attempting to engage with the individual, where we have that first set of 30 days where if after that 30 days we're unsuccessful, we will request a continuance of an additional 30 days, which will allow us a little more time. Earlier in the program, we were able to even go beyond that 60-day mark, but as numbers have picked up and resources have aren't as available as they were initially, we have kind of limited it to that 60 days. However, I will say all the petitioners are entitled to attend the initial hearing where the case may be dismissed. And those have been really valuable because it gets, even though conversations are happening with the petitioners and with the respondent leading up to that hearing, when you get them in the court, most oftentimes it's the petitioner because the respondent is declining or refusing services for whatever reason. The family or the petitioner is able to convey to the court additional information about what's going on or avenues in which maybe we could engage with this individual. And so in those situations, we have continued to pass that 60-day mark, not much longer, usually a period of 2 weeks, which out of that court hearing, we kind of have a strategy or a plan to go out in the community and connect with that individual and see if we can be successful. Keep in mind, it is a voluntary program with court oversight. And so we can't force people to enroll in the program. And if individuals are adamant that they don't want to take part, we'll educate them that if they change their mind, they can re-petition or be re-referred at that time. We will work with family members in terms of giving them resources such as the Access and Crisis Line, NAMI contacts for them so that they can talk with other families that might be going through similar situations where they can get resources as to how to navigate the behavioral health system in San Diego. We also educate the family as to continue to document symptoms, crises, continue to reach out to emergency services if an individual is being unsafe or threatening, because those need to be documented. And, at the end of the day, if they're not willing to receive treatment, they have to explore avenues in which they may have to, get to the hospital involuntarily to get stabilized. And then we can have more effective conversation about whether or not they want to engage in our services at that time. Now, once someone does enter into a care agreement, they do have status review hearings every 2 months. We do work closely with the public defender to review each case as it comes up on that status review hearing. And at times, individuals will say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be done. Our care team that we work with, we contract out through a Telecare Care Act team. We work closely with them. They update us about their contacts with individuals. And if someone is expressing a desire to disenroll or be dismissed, we'll connect them with their public defender. And, we want to meet them where they're at. Sometimes it's like, I don't want to be met with every day. Like, I want to be met with only a couple times a week. And so it's adjusting, that frequency of contacts. Now we don't want them to fall off track. And so that's where the status review hearing comes in, where at that status review hearing, as a collection of staff and parties involved, we can talk to the individual and acknowledge, like, maybe things aren't going as well as they want to. Maybe additional contacts would be helpful. Oftentimes individuals are willing to continue in the program, and it's more just a matter of listening to see where they're at. For individuals that might be incarcerated or being treated in the hospital, the Telecare Act team works closely with those facilities in terms of the coordination of care. The hospital or detention facility will get notified within our electronic health record that they're connected with Care Act, so they'll reach out to us and we can kind of coordinate care with them. Sometimes it's just a matter of them getting stabilized for a brief period, maybe 7 to 14 days in the hospital, and then they can be discharged, transitioned right back into the care program. Other times that individual may need a higher level of treatment than what care can provide, and that decision is left to the facility or the treating provider at that facility. And we have had individuals that have needed a higher level of support, and once that has been situated, care would be dismissed. And so along the lines of what Frank was saying, we do stay on board until that connection is made, because we don't want them to fall off track or fall through the cracks. For individuals in custody, once again, we do work with the providers in the facility, but we defer to basically the court process in terms of the charges that they're facing. We let those play out. We do let them know that care is involved, where sometimes that's enough for the court to say, continue to work with your ACT team, make sure that you're getting your treatment that you need. But then there are other times where their charges may prohibit them returning to care, and they would be dismissed at that time. And once again, be able to be re-referred once those situations are resolved.
That's great. Thank you, Claude. And what I really liked about what you said was when you were talking about how you encourage the families to not give up and to keep trying and stay in communication with County BH. And I think, Frank, you touched on that as well, because I know for family members who have loved ones that need care or other services, that it can feel very daunting and very overwhelming. And there can be periods of hopelessness for their loved one. And I think that continued engagement really helps communicate, we are here for you, we're working with you, and we're going to figure out an answer, even if it's not the one that we originally thought. Allie, would love to hear from you around the work you all are doing in San Mateo County. And I know, in the realm of folks that are incarcerated, you all have a pretty sophisticated approach to how it is that you're engaging folks in that realm. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you all are doing.
Yeah, so in San Mateo County, the majority of petitions that we get are through 1370 court, and We are part of the initial DSH pilot for step downs to care. So that's where most of our petitions are coming from. So our team has a very fast-tracked jail clearance for the jail, and that's where we're meeting with most of our folks. So even like with DSH, you know, if they were restored to competency, they'll still have a new criminal process to go through, but our team just starts working with them the moment we receive the petition and they're back in our county custody. That might even include a care agreement, you know, whatever we can get with that person, and just be very prepared for their services to be in place when they get released. You know, as far as dismissals have gone, you know, some of the releases from DSH, they needed different levels of care upon release, or maybe they weren't even staying in this. We've had some folks not stay in this country after release, but we also supported them getting back home. And with the 1370s, you know, as someone stays in jail, sometimes it's found like, okay, really, they do need a higher level of care, and they end up going to conservatorship, but we just stay involved until we have that full information.
That's great, Allie. Thank you. And with that, thinking kind of transitioning a little bit away from dismissals, would love to hear from you all around kind of what does graduation planning look like for your team and for the people that you're working with? How early are you starting those conversations? Who is typically involved? Does it differ if it's a care plan agreement? And I know this is a 13-part question, but are you all using any sort of incentives to help people stay engaged or at the point of graduation? So talk to us all about, as you're conceptualizing how to get people to the point of graduation, what's that looking like? Karina, do you mind sharing first?
I don't mind at all. So we have an incentive for all our participants when they come to court. This is something the court does. They have a little basket with goodies, so they get to take a snack after they are done with court. Some of them really like that they come and then, you know, take that snack afterwards. As far as the graduation, the planning for graduation really starts immediately because you want to get them engaged and involved in the different services that they need. Now, we don't have any care plans. All ours have been care agreements. So obviously that's where we go to look what the needs are and connect them with all the different services that they need. That's what's going to take them to the graduation, because we want them at that time to be engaged in all services that they need and also be more independent. So they're able to take themselves to the appointment. We are not doing that anymore and so forth. So it is an ongoing process throughout the year. We have not had anyone graduate before the year was up. It's been a year, but we also have had some that needed a little bit more time. That at the year mark, we were like, they're not quite there. Let's add a few more months and then see where we are at. So, and that has worked out well to do it that way. And the graduation itself, we do have some gifts for them. From our peer support program, they donate a plant for everyone. So we have a plant and a gift card for them. And the court also, they provide cupcakes, and they have also a little gift that they give the participants when they graduate. We do have a very great family advocates that we can link up the families with. So we have a few of them that work with us very closely. So if the families have any questions or concerns, even in the very beginning, maybe they were the one that filed the petition, or maybe the advocates even helps them file the petition. So they are great support to the families as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Karina. I love that. Allie, how about you? I know you all are doing some cool things around incentives, and I think you also had mentioned some evolution in your care agreement realm. Would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure. So with incentives, we definitely use that. Like Karina said, our court has snacks for anyone who comes. They can get a gift card. Our court gives gift cards. We give gift cards. Also, like our team will give gift cards as they're engaging a person in the community, making sure that one, like some of the best ways to engage a person is to buy them some food, but also making sure they've got their basic needs, clothes. We'll give them bus passes. I have taxi vouchers, whatever is needed to get someone to court. And for that, we actually have a lot of funds through the growth cap expenditure plan for those counties who, like ours, have a hefty growth cap penalty, where we send more people to state hospital than we are allotted to do so. We're able to use those funds per DSH regulations on Care Court, as well as some of our other programs. So that's been helpful because we didn't have additional funds for that. It also helps with, we use that money for motel vouchers. If that person is homeless, we want to make sure they can be somewhere who stable and get to court, and their attorney can find them, the case managers can find them, things like that. As far as the care agreement, that's something that, I'm sure for a lot of folks, like when we first started with care and it was just kind of figure it out as you go, there were a lot of clients who were only willing to give some very basic agreements. And at first, we were okay with that. But as we saw, especially when we get someone housed in like a BH housing, and they weren't willing to agree to, mental health services and medication management, and that causes some problems in housing. So we've made sure that it's sometimes to the attorney's chagrin that certain things have to be added in there, like the mental health treatment and medication management, so that they can, be successful in the community.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I appreciate your mention of the creative use of funding to try to figure out even small incentives, right, are helpful to help keep people engaged. And the population that we're serving in care a lot of times doesn't get a ton of positive reinforcement. So anything that we can do to help show them that we're in their corner and that we're really, really, really rooting for them, I think is really great. And I appreciate what you're saying about revisiting the care agreement as well, is that the way it was structured at the beginning wasn't quite meeting the needs of the court, the BH team, or the person in the way that you're hoping. And so really relatively quickly reapproaching it and modifying it, and being responsive to that, I think is really great. Hey, Frank, how about you? What are you thinking this realm? I know that we had some conversations about trying to feel out whether a person was feeling stable. Talk to us about how you're starting to plan for graduation.
Yeah, I think that incentive wise, our judge allows folks to not show up at court or to show up remotely sometimes, and we really try to push as many people getting to court as possible. So we use incentives, food, transportation, have our teams accompany them. And it really helps with reducing the barriers and the time in between hearings, because a lot of times you'll have somebody ask for a 30 or 60-day continuance, but that if that person was in court, they might be able to go into a side room, come to an agreement, or have a conversation. And additionally, you kind of want the judge and you want the public defender to see the person in person, right? To see, hey, this person really needs help now. Putting this off 30 days, they may not come back. So we use a lot of those incentives, both for the client, but also to get people to services, and it's been beneficial. The pad, we're actually piloting the PAD Psychiatric Advanced Directive app here as well. So we did the within the app and print version of it along the way, planned collaboratively with the public defender, and what that is going to look like, not just at graduation, but post graduation, because of the anxiety that it brings to folks, knowing that something's coming to an end and worrying about them decompensating. So we've had, in our first graduation, the person wanted it to be very small, wanted to have it at the telecare offices where they received services, pizza party-ish kind of thing, but very small and still, somewhat ceremony. Got to speak a little bit, but in a small crowd. And then our most recent one, it was done in the courtroom. In both instances, the judge brings cake, celebrates it, but talks about the work that folks have to do post the end of this, right? And in our most recent one, it was great. We had 30 or 40 people from our forensic programming show up. The client had friends and people from the FSP that were there. Our director of the healthcare agency, Dr. Kelly, attended. Our behavioral health director and our deputy directors attended. And really was a large scale ceremony. Did an entire, the judge spoke, our behavioral health director spoke, our person who oversees care directly in the court spoke, the client spoke, and then did some interfacing afterwards. So it was about a 2 or 3 hour process, but really went from that anxious piece of it coming to an end to really moving into that next phase and the next steps. So really, I think the focus is on what comes after that and maintaining the stability and maintaining the accountability for us to continue to wrap around services, and the accountability on the client's behalf to continue engaging even after the court's not involved anymore.
Thank you. Thank you. Claude, how about what you all are doing in San Diego?
Yes, here in San Diego, we've actually had graduations, all of which have taken place in the courthouse. Leading up to graduation, once again, we do work very collaboratively with the public defender, and as these individuals have their every 2-month status review hearing, we do look at their case as a whole and we base it off of their care agreement in terms of what goals are they achieving, what still needs to be worked on. And I would say usually at about month 6 or 7, our behavioral health services clinicians, when they complete their status review report, they're starting to have more of a conversation about graduation and what that looks like. I will say that a number of individuals, when they approach graduation, similar to what Frank was saying, they do experience a great deal of anxiety, which I hope everyone knows is totally normal. A lot of these individuals may not have completed or graduated from something for some time, if not ever. And so it can be very scary for them, especially when they've taken a chance to enter into a new program after maybe the behavioral health system had failed them, or maybe they felt like it given up on them. And so it really, through the CARE Act, individuals truly begin to feel part of a community in which they receive assistance in their recovery, which allows them to feel empowered because they've taken control of their life. And to see that in the courtroom, it's really amazing. And similar to what Frank had said, they are welcome to attend in person. They are actually encouraged to attend in person. Some choose to attend virtually. They are welcome to invite any supporters or individuals that they'd like to be part of that. When they do come to court, they're provided with a certificate from the case management team, as well as from behavioral health services, who has the public defender and the judge sign off on it. They're given the opportunity to make a statement in terms of what their experience is like. If there's a supporter involved, they're able to share how this has been for them, which once again, those are the moments why this program exists. A lot of people came forward trying to get their loved ones help, where over the past 12, 14 months, they've seen their loved one return to who they remember them as. And so that's really powerful stuff. And in terms of incentives, for all of their court hearings, the Telecare Care Act team tries to partner up their coordination for the court attendance with some type of case management contact, whether that's taking them out to eat, whether it's going shopping. They try to partner that up so that the individual isn't just sitting around waiting for court and that's it. And so we try to ensure that they get something out of that in addition to attending court. for the graduation, the court does provide a $50 gift card that they're able to use for anything basically. And so they definitely appreciate that. We've had individuals, at their graduation do performances, play music. This population is very creative, whether it be through art or music. It's amazing to hear what they can put out. And so it's been really, really wonderful to see.
Well, and I really appreciate you sharing that and sharing the other all of you sharing all of these creative ways that you're trying to figure out how to keep people engaged and incentivize their work in care, because care is hard work. And, it's not required that you come up with incentives. It's not required that you have really cool celebratory things you're doing at graduation, and you all taking that opportunity to kind of go above and beyond really speaks to the work that you're doing and the passion that you have for the people we're serving. And so we actually have a couple questions from the audience. The first question is, we'd love to hear just a quick answer. How often on average you're seeing people stay on care agreements? And so that could be, through reappointment, but about how long are the care agreements active in your counties? Allie, do you mind if I have you go first?
Sure. That's not a stat that I've looked at, but I'd say, especially because we have a lot of people in custody, those are some of the easier care agreements for us to get. And so far, so we've had care for a year now. I would say the majority of their time, maybe like 6 to 9 months at this point.
Mhm.
Interestingly, just kind of going along with this graduation process. So we are coming up on one of our first graduations in the next few months, and this person's doing really well. We're getting them housed this week, and everything's been great. And he's had a care agreement for the majority of the time. Majority of the time he's been in custody. So it'll be interesting to see how we kind of go with the graduation plan when most of the time that he's been on a care agreement, he's been locked up.
Well, that's a really interesting situation, Allie, and I'm sure you're not the only one that either has or will be navigating some situations like that. So we will look forward to hearing successes and or lessons learned from that case. So thank you for sharing that. Karina, how about you?
So we had a couple of them. They were done with their first year, but not ready yet. So those graduations will happen a little later. Typically, it will be at the 12-month mark that we will do the graduation. As I said, if there could be a reason why we need to hold off a little bit, maybe they didn't get all the benefits they needed or something, that we should be engaged with them for a little bit longer, then we will. So it's very flexible. It doesn't have to be a full other year. It could be, a few months.
Thank you. Frank, how about you? How long have you seen folks on care agreements typically?
We've only had a couple that have fallen off before the year, and none have graduated. It's usually been a relapse or decompensation, but I'd say just past a year, we'll take a couple months to engage. So to get them to a full year, we've had so all the care agreements that we have active right now have been active. I'd say we don't really base it on the time. We base it on the person's progress, and if we feel the person is stabilized and ongoing treatment, medication compliant. I think I shared with you, we did have one person who went to court and asked to be graduated and wasn't medication compliant. So we didn't concur with that. The judge ended up terminating that case. But I'd say, a year plus, it would be the average. We haven't had any, it's only a year and a half in, but we haven't had any that have been in for 18 months.
Okay. How about you, Claude?
Here in San Diego, I said previously, we are approaching our 2-year mark. And so many of these individuals who were our first initial care participants, many of which have been extended. I think part of that is due to being a brand new program and having to navigate the process and get everything in place. Part of that is many of these individuals, they may require ACT level case management, or if not strength-based case management, for the rest of their lives. And so once they complete care, which can only go for 2 years total, we want to ensure that they have a connection to a provider that they can work with long term. And so part of that is working with these other providers and educating them on how to take on these care participants, because they haven't had this level of oversight in terms of making sure that they're providing the necessary services for these participants. And so once again, we're going off of the graduation plan, where there's things that can always be added. There's always something to work on, but at the end of the day, knowing that they can only stay in the program for a certain period of time, we have to make that connection. Some of those delays are due to Social Security benefits not being in place. Maybe they're going through the appeal process. And so that is something that another ACT provider can take on and help manage, moving forward. It's not something that the individual necessarily has to have in place before they graduate. And so on average, I think we're looking at about 14 to 16 months within care. Now, we have had individuals that have graduated within 8-10 months. Once again, it's all individual basis, and we do review them at the every status review period. We had one individual, which was a conservatorship step down. They transitioned to live with family, stayed in care for several months, and then the family was relocating out of state. And at their graduation hearing, they actually asked the court if they had care in the state that they were going to, because they had such a good experience. And so, this is working, with this population. It is getting them the services that they need and desperately wanted. And it's also, there's building that trust in the system that, we are there to help them, which, is very important for them moving forward.
And Claude, I'm actually going to come back to you to talk a little bit more about this. There's a lot of questions around reappointments to care, both voluntary and court ordered. How you assess whether a person is ready for graduation versus reappointment, and being cognizant that we only have about 6 or 7 minutes left. And we'd love to hear from everyone on this. I know that you just mentioned you've had a lot of participants opt in for reappointment. I know that you've said that it's because they're feeling a little bit anxious about, oh my gosh, what am I going to do without all of the support? And I know you all are developing some tools to help people feel a little bit more steady at the time of graduation or reappointment. Do you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Absolutely. And so once again, I can't stress enough how important a collaborative relationship is with the public defender in this process, where we meet with them weekly to review every individual that is, having a status review hearing. And, even if they're at month 4, month 7, month 8, like, we're going to have a conversation about where they're at in their treatment. And, some, in terms of mental health treatment, a year really isn't that long of a period of time, especially when there's all this bureaucracy of, filling out, the intake forms and all that. And so when it gets to like month 10 or 11 and they have a status review hearing, we will have a discussion with the public defender as to whether or not this person is appropriate for graduation and transition to that next provider. And, based on that, the public defender will talk with the participant and see where they're at. And usually BHS through telecare, we have an idea of, how the individual is doing. And a lot of times the individual is volunteering to extend those services because they appreciate the oversight of the court, because it's keeping them accountable and for what they do and what they're working on. And that's been really helpful in terms of just meeting them where they're at. And, there's some individuals that might say, I want to graduate, where if the public defender talks to them and, meets them where they're at and tells them, well, you haven't done this isn't in place, you're going to go right back to where you were when you came in the program, that kind of has the participant become more amicable to staying in the program. And sometimes it's really just, highlighting what their current need is, because they might have identified a need, 10, 11 months ago, but that might have changed over time. And for whatever reason, they haven't been able to convey that to the treatment provider. And so by talking with the public defender, they're able to advocate for themselves and make certain that their needs are being met.
That's really great. That's really great. And Frank, I know that you all are having a lot of conversations about how to kind of approach reappointment from a therapeutic lens, right? So how do we use it to build rapport versus what might disrupt it? Do you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so we haven't used the term or the trigger of the word reappointment at all. We've had people go
Mhm.
past the year, and as was mentioned earlier, reappointment really only applies to the plan. So going into court, we don't want to trigger someone by saying, hey, you're getting close, but they hear are going to be reappointed for up to another year. The last thing we want them to do is disengage because in their mind they hear the year and saying, oh my gosh, I have to come back to court for a whole nother year. Maybe it's a month, maybe it's 3 months, but they don't hear that. So we haven't used that at all. We've had a lot that go past, but from the collaborative relationships and the public defender agreeing for that person, most, if not, yeah, I'd probably say 85% of these folks have got co-occurring disorders, right? So somebody relapses in one area and we want them to complete SUD treatment before we'll agree that they're graduation ready. Everyone's been on board with stuff like that. And I think the one example where I told you the person wanted to graduate, this person wasn't medication compliant, wasn't going to treatment, but respected the court, so kept coming to court, said, I've been coming to court for a year, graduate me. And we just didn't agree with that piece. So we just try not to use anything that's triggering, and to Claude's point, kind of meeting everybody where they're at and what their need is. And when everyone's in agreement that it needs to go to 13, 14, 15, 18 months, whatever it is, we don't need to put a term on continuing to go. We'll know when the 2 years is up, obviously, but we don't have to put a label on it that may negatively impact their treatment.
Well, and I think that's a really great way to demonstrate how courts can be trauma informed, right? Is just understanding the power of that language. And so, in some cases with some participants, if they're familiar with the idea of reappointment and it's been socialized to them as something that might be helpful and a safeguard, fantastic, use that term if it feels like it's a fit. But in other cases, Frank, like you're mentioning, that may be a word that makes them feel very triggered, very anxious, very upset, in which case you just say, hey, we can keep the support going for a few more months, and you don't necessarily have to be using the terms of art that might feel overwhelming for the individual. Karina, how about you all? How are you all approaching reappointment?
Yeah, we don't use that word either.
Okay. Great. No, this is great.
Yeah, like everybody else, we are meeting them where they are at. So if there is a need for more services from us, now all our services comes from the county behavioral health here in Riverside County. The care team is all behavioral health. We link them to our clinics, which is full service providers. So there is a lot of communication the whole time. So if they are ready for graduation, they've already been going to that clinic throughout the process. Well, as soon as we were able to engage with them, obviously, but once we have engaged with them. And so it's not like, yeah, we're stepping out and here you're going to be all by yourself and figure it out. They already have everything in place and know where to go, so to speak. But if they're not quite ready, and we do the same thing as the other counties, both behavioral health and the public defender will talk to the participants and ask them, like, how do you feel? You're ready now to graduate. How do you feel about that? And if somebody says, oh, no, I'm not quite ready, we will let them stay on for a little while longer. But yeah, we don't call it reappointment, and it may not be the full year either.
That's great. Thank you. And Allie, I know that you all are still kind of defining what that looks like, but as you're thinking about the reappointment process for your county, what comes to mind in terms of setting up? Because I think your perspective is really important, that even though you're not at the point where you're utilizing it yet, you're making a plan. And I think that's where a lot of our counties are, is what are we going to do when we come to this point? What are you all working on?
And we definitely want to see how stable someone is in their treatment. We take the approach that just like everyone else has been talking about, when care ends, your services do not end. So those things will still be in place. But if if we have someone doing very well and they're connected and they've got, their agreement is essentially met, then great, they're connected, and we, you know, as overseers of contracts like FSP and stuff, we're still kind of connected to that person. But if, you know, we see someone and they are connected to services, but they're not engaging with those services either, and we definitely are, you know, pretty much at that point with some folks as well. You know, when we're looking at, okay, you know, do we reappoint? Is this something that needs a higher level of care? Taking all these things in consideration, how to best serve the person. We definitely don't want to take away this component that might help them engage into the services before they're ready.
That's great. Well, I know we're here at the end of our hour, and I just want to say another thank you to you all as panelists. You know, I think what you have demonstrated is that you are all keeping the people that we serve as our North Star, and you know, honoring the individuals that you're working with, and really trying to ensure that the care process is dignified, is person-centered, is celebratory, and is tailoring the supports to the individual. We didn't hear a single person say, we have this cookie cutter approach and this is exactly how it works in every case. And I think your flexibility and your willingness to really think outside the box is showing how successful it is in the stories of the people you're serving. So thank you. Patricia, I'll kick it over to you for closing.
So I hope that was helpful to hear that conversation. I know I learned a lot from those counties presenters sharing how they're adapting things on the ground in their county to meet the needs of respondents. So again, I just wanted to point out some resources. We have our training and resource library, a volunteer supported toolkit, and a family resource guide. We also have resources for petitioners, where you can find audience-specific information about petitioning, how-to guides, etc. Resources for data collection and reporting, and then a county directory where you can find county behavioral health or court websites for each of the counties in California. And then a list of FAQs. You can go filter by topics and audience and whatnot. So there are several ways to be connected with us. You see here our listserv. We send our regular messages, including announcements of trainings and when training materials have been posted. Of course, you can visit our website, a number of ways to request TA or provide feedback. But if all else fails, or if you don't know where to go, you are welcome to email us at info@careact.org, and we will look to connect you with the resources you need. Thanks, and we hope to hear from you soon.